Very cool. Now, since we're talking about the Spartan program, let us talk about their education. We've talked about their physical stuff, talked about their first day, and of course this physical education gets a lot higher because we see earlier when John talks about his augmentation, he talks about how he hasn't exercised in a long time and he feels the need to go back and exercise. Anyway, education. They were taught, the children, all 75 of them, were taught by an artificial intelligence named Deja. She appears as a woman dressed in Greek clothing. I picture her kind of like Athena, but not. She teaches the children about military tactics, math, writing, critical thinking, and yeah, those four, with a main focus on military tactics. This goes very well with every Spartan achieving, and we know this from a description of John, every Spartan achieving college graduate thinking by the time they're 16 years old. This is very impressive, and this is not something that is altered within them during their physical augmentation, which we will talk about later, I promise. Okay, who is John? I mean, really, who is he? Well, he's one heck of a Spartan. Going from the age of 6, there's eventually an experiment that is done on the different Spartans. All of them are airlifted via pelicans and dropped off in a forest. Sorry, and Chief Mendez tells them, "Alright, all of you are coming back except for the last one." And the last one isn't coming back, he's got to find his way home. Children manage to kind of rally together, with John taking a rather surprised role of leadership. And so they start kind of wandering through the forest, following the tracks of what looks like boot prints. And they end up finding a pelican, guarded by 2 men who are not wearing military uniforms. The children attack and manage to knock the men unconscious. They take the pelican, which apparently is a very large pelican, holds 75 children. And they make contact with the AI Deja. More specifically, John makes contact with the AI Deja via the pelican's communication system. He talks to her and tells her about the situation, and she automatically flies the bird home, and they all get back. Now, after this, Mendez brings John in to a meeting with both himself and Catherine Halsey. He's rather upset because one child wasn't left behind. Now, and also because 2 officers were attacked. They were officers, though they were not wearing uniforms, and a pelican was stolen. So, understandably, he's a little upset. John, at the age of 6 now, explains that he couldn't have left any of his team behind, and yet he was the last one to get on board, which is true. And so if anyone should be left behind, he offers to go in the middle of the night to be left behind, since he was last on board. Mendez looks incredulously at Halsey, who then tells him, "What, you're thinking of doing something terrible? Let's make him a squad leader." And from there, he assumes a leadership position over the rest of the Spartans, for the rest of their lives, basically. From this, we move on to age 16, where the most brutal part of the Spartan process begins: physical augmentation. Physical augmentations were meant to enhance the abilities that the Spartans already had. These abilities include toughness, just the ability to take hits, strength, speed, reflexes, and just overall intelligence. I mean, I don't want to say that, but I mean like overall critical thinking skills, let's put it that way. These augmentations, and this is where my notes really come in handy, there were, I think, 5 or 6 different types of enhancements. So, the first one, the carbide ceramic ossification. Sounds complicated. Basically what it is metal being grafted onto the skeletons of the Spartans. It sounds terrible, but it made them basically unbreakable. However, there was quite a risk in this, and I believe it was a few Spartans died from having their bones pulverized from the metal that was grafted onto their skeleton. Good job. Okay, next is the muscular enhancement injections. These were given intravenously, and it is said to make you feel like napalm has been injected into your blood. Pleasant, right? This increased muscle density and muscle lactate. No, muscle. It decreased how long it takes your muscles to recover from stress. Let's put it that way. However, 5% of all patients suffered a massive cardiac volume increase, which killed them on the spot. Gotta love it. Next, the catalytic thyroid implant. Placed a platinum pellet into the human thyroid gland and secreted human growth hormones. This was done to increase limb size, limb strength, and all overall skeleton height. However, the risks. Alright, where is it? This one was said to to feel as though the subject's veins are being ripped out of their skin. This one also induces a feeling of napalm being injected into the skin, or into the blood. Which, by the way, if you don't know what napalm feels like, it's a military-grade fire starter. Next, the occipital capillary reversal occipital capillary reversal experiment or augmentation. This doused the retinas in chemicals and boosted blood vessel flow beneath the rods and cones of the Spartans' eyes. This made them basically it increased their vision by 300% and made it so they can see in the dark. It was really, really good. This doesn't have any. This doesn't. Obviously, there was pain here, but it was not stated in any of the books or on the wiki, so my apologies. Though some side effects were eye bleeding. Yeah, that'll do it. So, blood coming from the eyes. Sorry if I'm a little disjointed here, guys. It's a lot to cover, and I don't have the most amount of time, and it's hard to talk about all of this at one time and try to do it fully. Now, the last process. Superconducting fabrication of neural dendrites. Sounds complicated. This also gave a 300% increase in reflexes, increased intelligence and memory, with the risk of Parkinson's disease and Fletcher's syndrome, both of which are neurological disorders, which basically make you a cripple, unable to move or control your nerve impulses. Very fun. Overall, 34 Spartans were left when the augmentations were done. John was one of them. Out of 75, 34 were left. Now, during this process, right at the beginning, Halsey visits John's cubicle or medical cubicle where he's being injected with whichever one of these. She sees him fluttering in and out from general anesthesia, which is trying to knock him out. She talks to him, asks him what he's doing. He looks at her and says, "Trying to stay awake just for the fun of it." Interesting. So we see there that he's very brave, very daring, and very tough. I mean, who can really fight generalized anesthesia for any amount of time? She asks, and then this comes into play very much throughout John's life. He asks Halsey, you know, and this is paraphrase, obviously. All these quotes have been paraphrasing. You know, this seems like one of Chief Mendez's games again. How do I win? And as he begins to pass out, Halsey whispers to him, "I'll tell you how to win, John. Survive." Very, very good. Now, the enhancements worked on John. They were extremely effective, making it so much so that in the normalized gravity of a ship that he was taking a trip on for a while, this trip would take him to the next step of the Spartan training, that everything seemed to move too slowly. For instance, the speed bag, he'd hit it and everything seemed to move in slow motion. This is a result, obviously, of the things done to his eyes and the things done to his brain. Next step. I know you guys are all thinking, where does he get his armor from? I'll come to that in a minute. Actually, that may be all I have time for to get up to the armor today. Now, the next step. Oni, Office of Naval Intelligence, set up a nice little demonstration to see how well John would do against 3 orbital drop shock troopers. Compared to the Marines, these guys are the best of the best. However, with the Spartans, obviously they're the best of the best. But 99.9% of the general population doesn't know about the Spartans, so the ODST is the best of the best. These ODSTs were sent into the exercise room, to the weight room where John was, and meant to be aggressive towards him. Now, how did they incite this? John had, in order to make sure that everything was functioning, because everything was moving in slow motion, he pulled a pin out from one of the machines, dropped it, and timed it. Everything was working normal, but he didn't replace the pin. One of the ODSTs, probably noticing this, though it's not stated, worked out at that machine with the missing pin. It almost crushed him, so he gets mad. Okay. They get into a fight, and just as the fight begins warming up, a sergeant comes in and asks them what they're doing. He orders them into the ring, where John proceeds to kill one of the 3 men and brutally injure the other 2. Now you may ask, why would he do this? What's going on? Okay, let's break it down. John is attacked. We learn this from John himself in the books. John only knows 3 ways to interact with people. If they're a superior, he obeys them. If he's a civilian, he protects them. And if they're a teammate, he works with them. These 3 men were an aggressor, but at the same time they were a teammate, being human. He didn't know what to do. He defended himself without killing any of the 3 men at first until the sergeant arrived. Then he ordered the 4 men into the ring, where John suddenly began to understand that this must be some sort of mission. He had orders from a superior officer to fight in a ring, so he did. Simple as that. He even asked Chief Mendez about it later on, when Mendez comes in to observe the carnage. Alright, now, this ship that they were traveling on was taking them to the final step of Spartan augment. Well, one of the final steps of Moog Spartan's augmentation, not the final step for John. This final step was the Mjolnir armor. Yes, it is pronounced Mjolnir. It is named after the mythological hammer of Thor, god of thunder. And this armor is awesome. Extremely dense, extremely heavy, weighing over 1,000 pounds. It is only fit for Spartans. The one Marine who tried it on killed himself because the armor was actually so fast in responding to the movements, to the reactions of the brain, that every time that he brought up, like for instance when he brought up his hand to salute, he actually crushed his hand against the helmet of the armor. Now, let's talk about this armor. The Mjolnir armor is comprised of 3 layers. One layer that fits around the body, one layer that fits in between, and the green layer that everyone sees. The black layer that is the bottom layer is everything that fills in the gaps between the Spartan's armor. The middle layer is doesn't exist in the first stage, but it ends up becoming a housing for any sort of artificial intelligence. So this armor is built with refractive coating in order to deflect all bullet attacks, and it also increases the Spartan's reflexes, and keep in mind, 300% increase from normal because of the augmentations. It decreases their reaction time to like a millisecond. It's ridiculous. This also made them tougher, since they can take more hits without being hit physically. Stronger, because the suit augments how strong they are, and much more awesome looking. I mean, you think of the helmet. I mean, it's just so awesome. However, we didn't get into much of who John is today, but I don't have time to do that. We talked a lot about his backstory and where he comes from, but next time we're going to talk about the events of the Halo games. Oh, not counting the Fall of Reach, but whatever. We're going to talk about the events of the Halo games and John's personality, as well as his best friend. However, for now, I will see you guys next time, and I promise next time we will talk about John's core personality, who he is as a person. See you guys then.